I'm Tiffany.
And I'm Rihanna, and welcome back to Fresh Off the Broke.
Fresh Off the Broke is about personal experiences growing up Asian American in a predominantly white community, Asian media, and Asian pop culture in general. Race has always been a sensitive topic. Every day there are debates over race. With our podcast, we intend to shed light on the experiences of first-generation Asian immigrants, not put them on a pedestal.
We understand that race isn't everything, but there should be an acknowledgement of people of color, the knowledge gap, and the racial divide that will ideally be broken. Now that that's out of the way, let's get into the episode. Today is a bonus episode. Bet you didn't see that coming. We're actually going to be discussing the novel Not Your Yellow Fantasies by Joyce Park. We're actually in partnership with her, and we will be interviewing/discussing with her this episode. So, Joyce, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, my name is Joyce Giboom Park, and I am the author of Not Your Yellow Fantasy. Not Your Yellow Fantasy is kind of like an experimental genre. I combined both interviews, my personal experience, and my narrative, and a lot of research and nonfiction statistics to create a comprehensive overview of yellow fever, both towards society as a whole and in between personal lives of everyday individuals like you and me.
That sounds awesome. It sounds like something you're going to find on Google Scholar.
Yeah, it does. Okay, so I had a question about what really inspired you to make the book. Like, was there any specific moment that you were like, I need to write something about this, or was it more of like an accumulation of experiences that have happened to you and it's just built up,
I think it was a combination of both, honestly. I definitely had a trigger moment where I was at a college party and this tall white boy came over to me, and the first thing he asked was, "What kind are you?" And that question never goes well. I'm sure you guys have certain insights on it as well. And the minute I said, "I think I'm Korean, if that's what you're asking," he said, "Oh, that's the best kind." And so the rest of the night I was running away from him. He kept asking me if I spoke Chinese, if I'd been to Seoul.
What Korean person
just
doesn't
a
speak Chinese?
mixture and hodgepodge of East Asian insensitivities, if that makes sense. And in terms of an accumulation, I realized I wanted to write about it when I was actually starting on another writing project about human rights and empathy. And after a certain point, I realized that I couldn't write about human rights and empathy for some odd reason. I had this giant block. I had no motivation, and I just couldn't see myself write about human rights for an extended amount of time. And so when I really sat myself down and thought about why I had this block, I realized that I had never kind of understood human rights in the framework of my own identity. So I never accepted the microaggressions I grew up with, the trauma I grew up with as an immigrant in the US, as an Asian American. And so by accepting that and kind of processing that, I came to an understanding that this topic, yellow fever, was something that had been rotting inside of me for so long that I finally wanted to talk about.
So you were born in Korea, and were you born in Korea?
Yeah. So I was born in Korea and I immigrated here.
How old were you when you moved?
When I officially moved, around the 4th grade.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So, given that you said you originally had a different writing project, did you always want to be a writer, like an author, like a journalist, something like that?
I think I always understood that a lot of my power came from words. I always enjoyed the practice of writing. I don't think I necessarily ever saw myself as an author, but I did want to do some form of activism, and in this situation, writing was my platform.
Did you ever encounter anyone who's like against your book in a way? Like maybe someone in your friend group / mutuals, or like when you came out with the preliminary like ideas / stages of your book to the public? Was there anyone who was like, why are you doing this, stuff like that?
Oh, tell me about it. I had so many DMs. Okay, so I had a lot of people around me who were like, "Hey, maybe you're making too much of a big deal out of it. You know, isn't it a compliment that these guys are saying these things to you? Like they're attracted to you, right?" I was like,
Yikes.
"Hello?" What? So I got a lot of those, and then I got a lot of, you aren't, a professor, you don't have a PhD. Uh, why are you the person that should be writing this book? And I think that one was the most staggering for me. And honestly, I had to sit myself down and kind of validate that it's not your credentials that validate an experience. It's your experience is valid on its own. And as an individual who has experienced yellow fever in the past before, that gives me enough credibility and validity to express my own thoughts and opinions on it. So that was definitely one. The worst, though, I got a lot of DMs from non-Asian and Asian men who told me that what I was doing was offensive, that I hated men, that I was going to be cursed, that people like me were making men's rights so difficult. I got a lot of incels who...
Yes, just you.
Yeah. I got a lot of incels who were like, you can say all these things, but I personally don't think yellow fever is a thing. And I was like, oh, thank you, white male, for telling me that yellow fever is not a thing. I truly appreciate it. But yeah, Instagram was a hot mess for a while.
That's crazy. Like, okay, about the whole like people saying you don't have the credentials, I'm pretty sure that an Asian girl just like by herself would be enough credentials to speak about yellow fever, Like that's just a dumb observation by those people. And also, I'm quite surprised that like, well, I'm unfortunately not that surprised, but still a little surprised that like people really have the audacity and nothing else,
No, definitely. I think the most shocking one. So I collaborated with the Instagram influencer So You Want to Talk About, and we collaborated when they had, I think, 1 million or 1.5 million followers, and so my post with them got a lot of traction. But there was a slide that was talking about how problematic sexual stereotypes are and how Black men have been stereotyped to have larger than average penis size, while Asian men have smaller than average penis sizes. And that I was pointing out that it was a painful, harmful, false stereotype. And an Asian man DM'd me and said that I had no right to talk about it because I did not have a penis. And and at first I was like, okay, you're right. Like, I want to be careful with my laning. And then he continued to talk about how I was privileged for being an Asian woman and being fetishized because Asian men don't have that privilege and they're emasculated and rejected all the time. But as I continued to listen to him, it seemed as if he was kind of putting us on a pain hierarchy and kind of making it sound like it was a blessing to be fetishized and to have experienced yellow fever. And so I later came to the understanding that this was one of the famous Asian male incels or Asian men's rights activists.
Oh my God.
Unfortunately, those are very common.
Okay.
And they are one of the biggest critics to individuals who want to talk out about yellow fever.
I didn't know that was like a thing. That's crazy.
Yeah, I've never heard of that.
I wish I never heard of them either.
I mean, the more you know. That's interesting though, because obviously it's at like a different rate, but the thing is, don't Asian guys get fetishized too, like Korea,
Yeah, I think there's a trend now, especially I interviewed a few TikTok boys, and
Mm-hmm.
there seems to be an East Asian male fetish happening, especially with the rise of BTS. And so,
Uh-huh.
yeah, I wonder what the MRA Asians, the men's rights Asian activist have to say about that.
Comment down below.
Yeah, there's like every time I go on TikTok and an Asian boy like shows up on my explore page, it's always the comments are like completely just being like, you look like insert name from insert K-pop group here, or like, oh, just a little baby. It's like, wow, that's so weird. And I don't think people really understand how that is also very damaging, especially because yes, there's like a lot, no, not even a lot of talk about yellow fever towards like females, but also like towards males. I guess some girls are just like, well, it's a compliment, and it's even worse. But yeah, there's a lot of, I don't know, it's really bad. It's just really bad.
Yeah, it's honestly just another extension of objectification, and it just breaks my heart because a lot of people are like, okay, this kind of representation will help us to get more diverse representation in media. People will think Asian males are finally attractive. Like, this is the rhetoric I've been seeing. But at the end of the day, it's just objectification, commodification. These boys aren't being looked at as human beings. They're just seen as products of an era. And I think that is so problematic and just heartbreaking.
Yeah, especially because I think it's pretty recent too. Like Asian boys weren't really seen as, I don't know, Western attractive type. And all of a sudden now, so I can see like some boys are really like, they're really just letting it happen because finally people are paying attention to them, you know? Unfortunately, like that's just what happens. So,
And I think another really bad consequence is, the erasure of non-East Asian Asians. Asia is more than Korean men, more than East Asian men, and yet, because of this kind of fetishization that's happening towards these men, people are again assuming that we are monolith. We are again being assumed to all look a certain way, like K-pop boys, and yeah, just so many problematic consequences.
for sure. Like there's so much going on right now with the rise of K-pop, unfortunately. So, I guess just moving on to another question. Did you have any goals in mind when you were writing this book?
Yeah, so the biggest goal I had was to write a book that I wish had existed for myself when I was growing up. I felt very alone when I first encountered yellow fever. I didn't feel like this was something I could bring up to my parents. And because I was in a dominantly white neighborhood, I felt like I was the only one experiencing it. And so and I understand that I'm probably not the only one who went through this form of experience. And so my goal of the book was to at least be a comforting presence for at least one other Asian American girl, and to at least educate at least one person on the phenomenon of yellow fever.
That's awesome. I think anyone that reads your book can tell because you put a lot of effort into writing that the back part with all the sources.
Yeah, those sources made me want to cry every night for a solid week or two.
I can only imagine, man. Like doing schoolwork, I'm already enough. It's like, can't imagine.
So going back to what we just said about like sources and how you said that was like a really tiring part, how was the overall process to in writing Not Your Yellow Fantasy? Like how did you start out and how did this whole thing come together? Since you did say that you included like a personal part, and then you also had interviews.
Yeah, so I initially started off the book as a complete nonfiction. And so if you've seen my book, there's a lot of research in it. So the majority of my book in the beginning was just facts, straight facts, not a lot of personal narrative. And then I caught myself having mental health problems in between the process, and I kind of just had to sit myself down and kind of understand and introspect why I was feeling the way I was feeling. And I think I felt this strong urge to kind of, in a way, word vomit onto the pages my own experiences. And I always believe in the power of, collective support. And I wanted my book to be some form of collective presence for all Asian Americans. And so I started looking for other Asian American women to interview. I sought out people that felt like their experiences were never seen, never validated. And I promised them that they could stay anonymous, and that this could be a way we could share their story, not only for themselves, but for others to understand that yellow fever is a bigger problem outside of my own being. And I'm a huge artist. I love art. I've been working in art for a very long time, and I truly believe that art is such a powerful medium. And so I also sought out Asian American female artists that could kind of create art that aligns with the main theme of my book. And so at the end of the day, I was gathering interviews from not only everyday individuals, but also journalists and professors and activists, but also kind of curating this own gathering of artworks that I felt could be extremely impactful, aligned with the main not storyline, the main objective of my book.
How long have you been working on it? Just curious.
Not too long. I started around January, so it's almost a year. So January of 2020, yeah.
Wow, that's actually like really impressive.
Yeah, it really is. Because you have a lot, like there's a lot of work that's been put into it, and it's incredible. It's not even been a year. Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, but I totally love what you just said, because you know, like, I guess this is like a more simplified way of saying it, but people cope with things differently. And like how you said you had the word vomit, some people, they transfer that into artwork or into music and stuff like that. So you including artwork that shows yellow fever, research, case studies, interviews, those are other people's like different ways of expressing and I guess validating their pain.
Yeah, that was a beautiful way to put it. Thank you. But yeah, expression, validation, and just collective identity was what I was aiming for.
We did touch on it a little bit when we were talking about the rise of K-pop, the K-wave, and how that's affected TikTok and social media influencers in general. Didn't you say that you knew a guy who is like TikTok famous-ish now?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So he actually, I'm not gonna say any names, but he essentially just, he's Asian, but you can tell, like, he doesn't look white. I don't know how to explain it, but he's like the mix of, this is very weird for me to say, but like generally he's the type of mix where it's like he's perfect for girls who like don't really like Asian guys, but they're like, oh, he's kind of exotic, like he's that. Yeah, exactly. And he got a perm because I guess every single guy needs a perm nowadays. And all of a sudden, he just blew up on TikTok. Like, blew up on TikTok. out of nowhere. And even before that, like, he wasn't really the most popular kid. He's mainly just a troublemaker. But for him, like, for his case, he's really just doing this because he wants a way to earn money easy. And with TikTok ads, he's literally getting sponsorships for doing nothing, which is crazy. Like, I've known this kid since I was 4, and I think the way he's dealing with it though, like all the, I can't even say fetishization, like he's been monetizing off of it, to be honest. Like, he's owning it, which is good for him, but I know that there's a lot of boys on TikTok, just for example, that aren't really dealing with it so well. Because I know I did come across a video, I forget who it's by, but it was him just reading out the comments that he's been getting from like K-pop fan accounts or anime fan accounts, being like, "Oh, you're just a little baby. Oh, you're so cute." And he's like, "I feel really looked down upon because I'm a grown man who just happens to have an accent, like an Asian accent, and all of a sudden everyone's telling me like, oh, you're so cute, you can't even speak English properly," like treating him like a baby. Yeah, it's insane. It's really sad to see. Yeah.
That's so messed up in so many ways. Wow, I am so sorry for that man. Um, and also for your friend that's monetizing off of being fetishized. I truly hope and pray that he is doing okay mentally and that this is, not building up some toxicity or some form of internalized shame within him, because that would be terrible. But yeah, it's so frustrating. I also interviewed 3 TikTok East Asian stars about this, and every single one of them told me that they were disgusted by certain comments, but that they were afraid to say they were disgusted, like you said earlier, because a lot of their fan base are these people. And so they were like, do we get to express sort of our disgust and annoyance at our own fans, or do we simply just shut up and suck it up and take it as a compliment? And I couldn't help but kind of remember the mentality I had in middle school and high school when guys were fetishizing me, where I was like, should I tell them I'm annoyed, or should I be thankful and accept it as a compliment like everyone's telling me to do? And that same parallel and this repetition of really problematic history is just so heartbreaking again. And especially because Asian men have historically been known to have been emasculated, infantilized to a certain extent, considered effeminate beings. All of these stereotypes and problematic history kind of wrapping around TikTok and this new generation of youth is very worrisome in a lot of ways. And these girls that are commenting on their profiles, I don't know really how TikTok works. They're gonna think it's okay to do this for the rest of their lives if no one corrects them. And so how do we even get to a point in society where these men and women can express their disgust towards certain fetishization or objectification, and also fix the mentality that these fans have who already think it's okay to do this because they think it's complimentary? It's like a double-pronged problem that just I don't really know what to do. I don't think anyone does, and it's just the reality of what we live in right now.
Yeah, for sure. And the worst part is that TikTok, like, just TikTok in general, can get so out of control. And the way that the comment sections, just no one calls anyone out. It's just everyone joins in, and there's no one who's like, hey, maybe we should stop this. Like, people just don't care on TikTok, and it's really sad to see.
Yeah, and on a very slightly unrelated note, there's a lot of bullying down in TikTok comments I've noticed. People, I don't know, like for example, with comments such as like what you were saying with like the compliments being like, oh my god, is that so and so from BTS? Or oh my god, you look like whoever, and then everyone repeats that. It's kind of like an echo chamber. But then sometimes when someone's just like making a video that they like, and then people are like, how about you don't do that, or like no, and then that just everyone comments that in the same place, and I'm like, wait, what? I thought cyberbullying. Hello.
Yeah, I feel like social media nowadays is just getting more and more like harmful. It was getting to a point where it was like, okay, maybe that we can use social media as a way to like come together and talk about all these issues, and then all of a sudden it's like, why are we moving backwards?
Yeah, I feel like there was a gradual rise, and then there was like some weird tipping point where everything just went back down.
Yeah.
Like the whole cancel culture thing.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Cyberbullying, like you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned. It's just a giant headache.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think something else to point out is the amount of like just white girls taking Asian features and making it their aesthetic, and then all of a sudden it's like the white girls who are trying to look like they're Asian are getting more popularity, and the Asian girls who stick up for that, they're like, hello, why are you doing this? And everyone just bullies the Asian girls instead of calling out the white girl. Yeah.
But yeah, the fox eye trend, the one you mentioned,
Mhm.
pissed me off so much. I'm sure a lot of Asian girls have also experienced this, but as a kid, even in Mexico during my study abroad program, in high school, the slanted eye joke, the Koreans have, it goes up, Japanese go down if you're mixed, it's sideways, like all these, playground name calling jokes, so-called jokes left such big scars on me. So watching these girls, some of them do surgery to make their eyes look slanted and then, like you said, get more recognition than the actual Asian girls, really, it's very triggering, especially because a lot of them also like to wear culturally appropriative clothing. So I see them in like their sexy, slutty, cheap how dresses, or modernized and extremely short hanbok dresses. And I'm just like, you guys are white, and it's really unfair that it's only popular now that you've accepted it and you've declared it as an aesthetic, whereas while we're stuck with it, and while we grew up with it, and when you guys saw that we grew up with it, it was a joke, it was something to ridicule, it was something unattractive.
For sure.
Yeah,
It's
and it always goes back to, but isn't that a compliment? Shouldn't you
mhm.
be happy that things are like
That
popular now, or
line.
that I like this thing? Shouldn't you be happy now? Like, oh my God. And yeah, it's just like, how come growing up when I liked listening to Asian music, it wasn't cool, but then all of a sudden, because BTS won an award, it's cool now. Like, not to pile on BTS. Congratulations to their Grammy nomination.
Yeah, but the only thing that like made me like worried about the whole K-pop moving to the West is like all the racism that comes with it. Like there's so much racism that came with it, and it's like I'm so tired of it already.
When are you gonna come out with an English song?
Oh my, yeah, that pissed me
That's
off.
so triggering.
Yeah. Like I was talking, okay, quick side note. My mom's boss, who's like a 60-year-old woman, is in love with BTS, right? Like she's white. Um and she was telling my mom how, oh, they finally came out with an English song, and I was telling my mom like, why why do you want them to come out with an English song if you signed up for the whole K-pop thing? There's no point in doing an English song. And apparently her reasoning was like, they have to acknowledge that they have a Western fan base, and it's like, no, they don't necessarily have to. They don't have to do anything. They're Korean pop. That's kind of the whole point, you know?
And Western doesn't equate to English. Like, not all so-called Westerners speak English. It's just very US based, very North American based.
Yes, for sure. It's always the US that's like, look at me, you know? Not to bash the US, but also to
It's
bash the
oh,
US.
it's always pissed me off how English is seen as the number one language when one, it's not the most spoken one, two, it has the dumbest rules, sorry,
Yeah.
and three, doesn't it, not to be that person, but like it sounds bad, honestly, English
Yeah. It's
sounds
weird.
very boring. But yeah, it bothers me how being famous or being liked in the West as a non like white person is seen as better than being famous in your own native country. Not that you have to be famous in your own native country, but it seems like you can't just be famous in Thailand. You have to be famous in Thailand and in the US.
Mm-hmm.
Hollywood films, some of them haven't been that great lately. I'm just gotta say.
Some
Yeah.
of them? You mean most of them?
What?
So true.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
This is slightly unrelated, but I watched a Netflix movie yesterday, or a movie on Netflix with my roommates, and it was a 2019 horror movie. And one of the the first character they introduced outside of the main, of course, attractive, tall, white protagonist was his black friend. And, 2019 film, horror movie on Netflix, good reviews, you're just like, maybe they won't kill off the black guy. And of course, they kill off the black guy.
Oh God.
And I was just watching and I was like, wow, this is the true horror, that in 2019, I am still watching a horror movie that unironically killed off the black guy. And it's sad. All these different shows, like Amazon's famous show, The Boys, they had an Asian woman who didn't have any lines because she was a mute character. I was watching her and I was like,
Oh my God.
2020, here we
Wow.
go. And that's just Hollywood for ya.
Yeah, it's sad that like you can still see it very clearly in modern media. It's like you would think that we've moved on even just a little bit, but they're not even like hiding it sometimes. It's insane.
Yeah, and another thing that disappoints me is how this isn't every case, but in a lot of cases when they announce Asian leads, they're like half white or their love interest is white, which is like, listen, you know what you're doing.
They know exactly what they're
It's
doing.
diversity. Yeah. No, diversity. Look, she's Asian. Come on, guys. Isn't this what you wanted?
Literally. There always has to like there's always a little white part to make it acceptable for the mass to ingest, you know.
Yeah. And I mean, in that movie, To All the Boys, even though Laura Jean was Asian, they never touched on the fact that she was Asian. She just happened to be Asian.
Yeah.
Wow, okay, that movie, I loved it at first, but the more I think about it, it makes me really angry. Number one, they killed off the only full Asian character, the mother. Number two, Laura Jean sides with the really racist movie. I think it was 16 Candles, right? And says it's okay because the main white protagonist is good looking. Number three, they make the only minority character in the first movie gay and thus non-threatening to Peter Kavinsky. And number four,
right. That
yeah,
guy that originally wrote her letter, and then there was that embarrassing moment because she found out.
Yeah. And so at the end of the day, it was an Asian girl, two white protagonists, but it was also an Asian girl who never really connected with her Asian roots except for the fact that she looked Asian. And so just a lot of problematic layering. where I'm just like, is this a result of Hollywood, or is this a result of internalized shame from the author? Like, what's happening here? And is it really a win for diversity?
Yeah. I guess that the argument, like, for me, there's always the argument that's like, oh, but we need Asian characters to be in a story without acknowledging that they're Asian in order for it to be, completely normalized. But we're not at that point yet, We're definitely not at that point, especially when the Asian community still has to celebrate the fact that, oh my God, there's finally a movie with an Asian MC, Like, it's sad, really.
So many heartbreaking moments. I still remember with Parasites when I personally found myself crying just watching like an all Asian cast up there receiving the award. But I remember the day after I ran into like a group of people at my school who were talking about it, and it was like the moral of the story was like, oh, it's great that they won, but they're all Asian. Like it's weird. And I was like, wow, we really haven't come a long way, have we?
Yeah, like, how do you say that and then not realize what you're saying? Like, what the heck?
Yeah, there's no way to say that sentence without being the one in the wrong. What's wrong with them being Asian? Would you have been upset if they were French?
Yeah.
Exactly. Like if they were European, you'd have been like, oh, wow, so cool, so fancy Europeans, but just because they're Korean, it's like, nah, did they really deserve to win?
Yeah, literally. It's like, yes, they did. Why are you questioning that?
You try making a movie.
Exactly.
Yeah, you try making a movie in another language and get an international audience through subtitles.
Exactly.
Then come back and tell me.
It's so true, though. Like, people are just racist, and they're like, I'm not, though. It's like, yes, you are. I don't get it, man. But okay, there's one thing I was wondering. I'm sorry if you can hear my birds in the background, like, fighting, but they are in the background fighting right now. What are your thoughts on, like, okay, so even without um talking about yellow fever specifically, what are your thoughts on, like, having a preference for race? Because I think it's a very fine line when it's like, oh, I just prefer, like, the features on this typical, you know, compared to, I don't know, let's say a white guy. Because I know some people who are like, oh, I just prefer Asian girls, but then it's like they're clearly very, you know, fetishizing an Asian girl, but then they fight for the fact that it's like, oh no, I just prefer an Asian girl over this. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think I thought about this a lot too, and honestly, I don't think I have a clear-cut answer, but I like to say that I think preferences as a whole are fine as long as they don't permeate an oppressive line of history or behavior towards a certain group. And I think most racial preferences are problematic because they permeate oppressive behaviors or history. And so, what I like to tell people is just try to see every human being as an individual, separate human being. Like, don't collectively group your preferences for a certain race and kind of impose that upon a race and kind of limit your own importance, your own person, and kind of see that we are all a lot smaller pieces of a society that should work to respect the other person just as much as you respect yourself. And so racial preferences are just very difficult because they, number one, again, they extend that line of oppressive behavior most of the time. And number two, they stereotype and they group people into things that a lot of the times dehumanize them and objectify them into something that's less than what they actually deserve. That being said, I do think having like a cultural preference is a lot more acceptable. saying that you are more attracted to someone that shares similar values with you, like that's fine. But if you are saying that you prefer the phenotypic traits of an individual because of their race, I think you really need to stop yourself and kind of introspect what you really mean by that.
Yeah, I think that was a really good answer because in a situation where, hypothetically you had two people and they were basically the exact same except for their race, and then someone chose like one or the other simply because they were that race, then there's definitely something behind that driving it, right? Because they're the same exact person except.
I saw a comment on one of the posts that I worked on Instagram for a collaboration, and it was like, if you went in for a job interview and they told you and another candidate that you guys were equally as qualified, but they said they prefer the other one because of their race, you would call that racist. So why do you think having a racial preference in dating is acceptable?
Very true. Very true. Um, I actually just remembered a little funny story. I'm saying funny because okay, let me explain. So
I'm slightly scared.
it's
I'm
kind of
very
gross.
scared.
Yeah, it's kind of gross, but so my friend, let's just say friend, introduced me to one of their friends. And they're 2 years younger than us, right? So they're still pretty young, which is why I find it kind of funny because, they're not very mature yet. And I talked to this friend once, right? He was cool. He had some weird morals, but I just like let it I didn't really pay any attention to it because I'm like, okay, I know he's still really young. He doesn't really understand the harm that he's saying. Even though I tried to explain it to him, obviously he won't listen. But the next time I talked to him, the second time I ever talked to this kid, he goes, "Hey, guess what? I'm into Filipino girls now." And I was like, excuse me? And he's like, "Yeah, I just started watching Filipino girl porn." And
You're kidding.
no, I'm not. I'm not. I wish I was. And it was the second time I talked to this kid, and I was like, "Are you kidding?" Like, first of all, you don't say that to someone you've just met. And it's not even in real life, it's over FaceTime, right? And I was like, "That's gross. And you're so young, and ew. Why did you say that?" Yeah,
Yeah, like why did he feel the need to tell you specifically that?
exactly. Like, why? Man, it was so weird.
What do you even say to that?
I was like, what is
Hangs up.
wrong with you? Yeah,
I think I would hang up and be
Just
like,
block
okay,
him.
yeah. It's like,
enjoy
okay,
that. Bye.
yeah. It was so like the first time he just asked what my ethnicity was. I told him I was Filipino, and then the next time I talked to him, "Hey, guess what?" And I'm like, "Ew, ew, gross."
The whole fetishization happening in porn and the porn industry is also so problematic.
Oh yeah.
Um, I remember reading, I wrote this in my book, but the top categories always include some form of Asian, whether that's hentai or whether that's, I don't know, Japanese porn or Korean porn. And I think porn is one of the biggest platforms where the whole Asians are submissive playthings. Asians are easy. Asians are sexy, exotic. Like that's where the stereotype erupts from.
Mm-hmm.
And because, like you said, like that young boy, and a lot of these teenage boys are consuming such media that perpetuates such toxicity. Um, it's really difficult for individuals to kind of separate that stereotype from their sex life and their sexual preferences. And I think that really shows on dating apps and in dating culture in general.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really have any personal stories because growing up, it was always just Asian girls you. Like I don't think I've personally experienced yellow fever as much, only because the environment I grew up in was very much like rejecting. of Asian people. So I don't have as much to share on that.
I think that rejection is also very important, though. The idea that I forgot who I talked to about this, but one of my interviewees mentioned that, you know, the spectrum goes from fetishization to rejection, and both are just as problematic because they complement each other. And you know, yellow fever wouldn't exist without rejection of the same type of race in a way. And I think that really that kind of upbringing you had really shows the two types of narrative that Asian women are often placed in. We are either seen as, you know, objects meant to dominate, meant to fuck, meant to sexualize, or we're not human, we're not lovable, we're not attractive, we're not acceptable in society. There's no in between, and I think that is so fucking messed up.
Agreed.
Yeah, and you know how in school people like ship other people, and they're like, oh my god, y'all would be cute together. Like I would always be put with like my Asian guy friends, because I mean, who else, right? And I remember one time, this was me like kind of, I would say half calling out, half just like trying to get the words out of them. And so I was saying, why do you think this person and I should be together? And they're like, because y'all look cute together. And I'm like, look cute together how? And then they like paused for a sec, and I was like, look cute together how?
Yeah.
And then they're like, well, I mean, like, you know, because y'all are like
The same
race, right? And I was like, no, we're not. And we weren't, but just say it. Honestly, just say it.
Yeah, if you're gonna do that, just own up to it at that point. Like, stop trying to act like you're in the right here, because you're not.
Like, we already know you're racist. Just
Exactly.
go full out.
Yeah, and people in school would always assume that I was either someone's sibling or someone's girlfriend, which is okay.
Interesting.
I mean, I definitely can't be both, but no, I'm not related to every other Asian guy at school.
Oh my gosh.
Surprise.
I know. Yeah, especially like when I used to do dance competitions, I would have duets with like I had a duet with my one Chinese friend, and our dance was called Chinese dance, and the choreographer had us put what's the word, chopsticks in our hair. So bad. It was so bad. But I had a duet with her, and then I had a duet with another Filipino girl, but we don't look anything alike. And every time we would like go backstage or would be talking to like someone who worked at the competition, we'd always get hit with the, are you guys sisters? Are you guys related? Like, you guys must be twins. And it's like, no, we're not. So bad.
That's so real. My freshman year of high school, so I have a really close friend whose name also starts with a J, and my name on roll call was Giboom, so my Korean name, and our, you know, old white teacher could not remember my name, my English name, or separate my friend and I apart, who was also Korean American. And so for a solid 3 months, I didn't have to come to class because he would just call her name twice and she would go, here, and I just had perfect attendance because he couldn't differentiate us as two different people.
That's literally me in like my chemistry class last year, and Tiffany was in it. Like, our teacher did not know who I was. It was terrible.
Yeah, our teacher mixed me and this other girl up, and then completely didn't know who Rihanna was. And
Yeah,
I don't think
Oh.
I don't think Rihanna existed in her mind until the beginning of this year.
Yeah. Like, the only good side about that was that, like, if she wanted to pick on me, she couldn't, because she would literally point at me, open her mouth, close her mouth, and then move on to another Asian girl. It was so bad.
Yeah, you could tell too. Sometimes she would look at Rihanna and think of picking her, but then she'd look a little conflicted and then change her mind.
Yeah, she just didn't know who I was. And there was like how many Asian girls in my class? 1, 2, 3, like 5 Asian girls in that class or something like that, and I was just the only one she didn't know. So weird.
Yeah,
What the
about
heck?
5-ish.
I'm pretty sure one time she called me by like another Asian girl's name as well. I feel like that's happened multiple times in that class, and then she just stopped calling my name when I was like, that's not me.
Yeah, she'll just be
Gave
like,
up.
hey, can you
Yeah.
do it? Yeah. Rihanna and I get mixed up for each other too.
Oh yeah.
I remember in English class. I think the thing is, in English class, there was this one Asian girl that happened to be the teacher's favorite, and there were like not for like a weird reason, by the way. And then there were a few other Asian girls, including Rihanna and I. And so the rest of us would all get mixed up for each other. And then he would never mix up that person with anyone else because that person was his favorite, right? So the rest of us were just like a turntable, like a
Yeah,
little
we were
eight.
the irrelevant Asian girl.
Sometimes in the past when someone would look at me, well, a teacher would look at me and then call me the wrong name, I would answer and say, that's not me. But then nowadays, I've just grown to let them be confused as to why I'm not answering them and then wait for them to realize, or just they'll be like, why aren't you answering me? I'm like, because that's not who you're calling.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I genuinely appreciate all the spaces that, kind of promote Asian female excellence. So just being able to rant about all the things that we're collectively triggered by was so therapeutic.
Mm-hmm.
If you can, please support my book. It'll be available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, I believe, and in various stores. So just stay in touch and follow my Instagram at Not Your Yellow Fantasy.
Hell yeah. We'll link you in the description of all of our platforms. And thank you so much for like joining us today.
Yeah, I genuinely had a good time.
Yeah.
That was a very nice conversation. I felt like it was just 3 Asian girls kind of just complaining a little bit.
Those are the best conversations.
All the time.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much for what you're doing and also for guesting on our podcast.
Yeah.
I hope you guys enjoyed the book, or I hope you enjoyed the past tense the book.
No, I definitely did.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, I wish you all the best at university and in life in general. Life is hard.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's gonna catch on.
Yeah, hopefully you don't encounter too many more incels and stuff like that, because ew.
Yeah.
Ew.
You're gonna be untouchable.
Yeah. Nice talking to you.
All right, bye guys. Thank
Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much for tuning in today. We hope you enjoyed that as much as we did. Leave a comment down below about, Asian guys you've seen on TikTok, your thoughts on their whole comment section and the idea of like calling Asian guys literally any other K-pop person.
Oh god.
Leave a nice comment for Joyce. She's awesome. So, you should say something about it.
Be nice or else.
Yeah. No cyberbullying. That's not allowed.
This isn't
Like that
TikTok.
person that left a very nice comment and then deleted it on our cultural appropriation.
Oh, they deleted it?
Yeah.
Lame. If you're gonna leave a mean comment, keep it up.
Yeah. Say it with your chest.
Exactly. We're gonna link everything in the description about Joyce. But if you want to find out more about us, check out the card link in our Instagram bio. It contains links to our streaming platforms such as Spotify, Anchor, Apple Podcasts, and more. Follow us for more behind-the-scenes content, announcements, and other random things we decide to put on there.
See you back to our bi-weekly schedule.